Hi, welcome to Losing Faith, Finding Spirit. Today I want to talk about limiting beliefs. What are limiting beliefs? What are some ways to figure out what your limiting beliefs are and how to unlearn them? Well, we're going to begin with talking about what limiting beliefs are. Sometimes we even call them false beliefs. Limiting beliefs are false things that you believe about yourself that inhibit you from reaching your full potential. So people who have experience with complex trauma in their childhood and people who have been in any kind of narcissistic or emotionally abusive, toxic relationships will have some limiting false beliefs inside of them. These beliefs are the ones that keep you in those relationships, that hinder you from growing to your full potential and learning that you are worthy of so much more than the abusive relationship. And those beliefs can stem from childhood trauma, which is why you entered into a bad relationship, because you had those beliefs in childhood. And now you hold those are your foundation of beliefs. That's what you believe about yourself to be true, even though it is not, which is why we call them false beliefs. An example of a limiting belief would be when I had some limiting beliefs about finances. I believed that I wasn't worthy of spending money on myself, like getting the nice things, whether it be the name brand, whether it be like going out and getting something that I need for myself or something that I really enjoy. I would have to really, really find a lot of joy from something, or have an underlying belief that that hobby or interest would bring me more financial gains in order for me to spend the money on myself. That is a limiting belief, because I didn't feel that way about other people. I was fine spending money on my family and friends. I absolutely believed that they were worthy of such nice things. I wanted them to have those experiences, but I didn't believe that I could spend that same kind of money and those same kind of experiences on myself, because I didn't believe I was worthy. And that's where it stems from, is a limiting belief that somehow you're bad. Fear-based beliefs are always limiting. Most of them are false. A lot of fear-based beliefs are limiting beliefs that keep you stuck, that keep you small, that keep you just so far from what you can achieve. Now, if you're in an abusive relationship, emotionally abusive is what I mostly talk about here, your partner, the abusive partner, is going to try to instill in you those limiting beliefs, because they need you to be small. They need you to be weak. They need you to believe that you are not worthy, because if you start believing that you are worthy, if you start thinking that you are smart enough, brave enough, and that you've got enough money, you're in a good situation, you're going to leave them, because you don't need to put up with the behavior that they have been treating you. When you start believing you're worthy of something more, you won't stay. And that's what happened to me. Once I finally realized and started believing that I am worthy of more, that I'm worthy of having the love that I give to others returned to me. I'm worthy of having somebody love me as much as I love others. And if the partner can't even do the bare minimum, that's not worth it. That's too much. It's not okay. And so you end the relationship. And that's what ended up happening in my situation. I finally realized, this is not okay. This is not how somebody who loves somebody else treats you. I'm out. This is over. I don't want to raise my kid in this. And that really was the big turning point for me. I love my kids so much that I realized I needed to make some changes to protect my child from this very damaging relationship, because even though my child does spend time with their other parent, with the person who was very emotionally abusive to me, I'm not, and I'm getting better. So when my child is with me, they see a healthy, happy parent. And I'm not perfect. I do have my days. I do get triggered. I'm working through it. But they're seeing me, my child sees me work through those things. We communicate. I'm a safe place for my child. So already we both, my child and I, have made tremendous growth in the past year. So much so that my family and my in-laws actually were like, wow, you guys are like totally different people. Their exact words were, my brother-in-law told me, he said, it's like you're human again. And my brother-in-law didn't know me before. Um, so for my brother-in-law to say it's like we're human, that says so much. And it really, like, I was so meek and meager, and everything had to be like whatever my ex-husband wanted, whatever my ex-husband thought. He was the, first in everything in my mind. That was also a limiting belief. The belief that somebody else is more important. That's not true. We're all equal. Like, nobody else is more important than you unless you have kids. Then I understand. We do feel that way about our kids because we love them, and that makes you feel like they need to be more important. But even then, you need to take care of yourself to take good care of your kids, to give them a safe place. If you don't take care of your own mental health, your own physical health, your own needs, you're not going to be able to raise your child. You're not going to be able to be there for them in the ways that could be the best. You're not going to reach your full potential to be your best parent for your child. And that's the time when I got that message. That's when I fully broke through and was like, I need to work on me. I need to be the best I can be so that I can be my full potential as a mother, my full potential as a parent, and my full potential as a person. And then my child's going to see that, and they will be able to have a path to find their full potential. And that's the ultimate goal that I have for my child and my own parenting goal. How do we find limiting beliefs? All right. In order to identify limiting and false beliefs, you need to get in touch with your feelings. Like, you need to be aware of what your emotions are telling you. Once you start really becoming aware of your emotions, you'll be able to identify when a feeling and a thought comes from a place of fear or a place of truth. And it takes a while, because especially if you've come from any childhood trauma, you're not going to have a very strong connection to your inner knowing and your inner feelings, because you were taught that feelings are dangerous. So that's the first step, is really accepting that feelings are not dangerous. That anger is not to be, you don't have to be afraid of your own anger. I was afraid of anger. I was afraid of my own anger. I was afraid of angry people, because angry people were not safe. I've never been in a situation where being around an angry alcoholic was safe. I just haven't. And that is the core belief that I've had to struggle with, was dealing with anger. And anytime anyone's anger would set me off, my child's anger, my ex-husband's anger, my own anger, I had a really hard time with anger. And that was a limiting belief, because I was afraid. And once I stopped being afraid of when people get angry, and when I got angry, I started being able to understand what my anger was telling me. And usually, in my case, my anger was telling me that I needed to set boundaries. Every time I get upset and angry about something, it's a message from my body saying that this is a very important issue for me. I'm very passionate about this topic or issue that I'm angry about, and I need to set boundaries around it. And I've learned to do that. So the very first step to identifying false beliefs is getting in touch with your feelings. The second step is to identify where those feelings are coming from. Are they coming from your childhood? Is there something that happened in your childhood that planted this belief into you? I remember when I was a very early mother, my child was still like an infant. My child was very young. I was still very new to mothering. And every time I heard the sirens, like a police siren, and we hear them a lot where I live. We have a fire station really not that far, and a major road not that far, so sirens are a very common occurrence where I live. But if my child was crying, which is very normal for an infant and a toddler, a baby to cry, and I felt very stressed over the crying, and I heard sirens in the distance, I was convinced that they were coming to take my child away from me. I'm not lying to you. I had it fully believed in my mind that somebody was coming to take my child away because I'm not a good parent. It occurred several times, and finally I had to stop myself, and I was like, where is this coming from? Why do I keep thinking somebody's going to take my kid away? Kids cry, babies cry. Why do I keep thinking that somebody's going to take my kid away just because they're crying? I heard it in my mother's voice. I heard her say, if you kids don't behave, child services are going to take you away and you'll never see me again. Literally, she said this when I was a kid. And I remember too, I was really upset about something because I grew up with an alcoholic father and a very abusive situation as well. I was crying about something, and she said, if you're so unhappy, go ahead and call child services and they'll come take you away and you'll never see us again. Like, my mother said these things to me. And once I connected that thought, the police are coming to take my child away because he's crying, because my child's crying, to my mother told me that because I'm upset and crying and not behaving, child services are going to take me away. Once I connected those two trains of thought to each other, I was like, oh, this isn't my thought. I don't believe that the police are coming. That doesn't make sense. The police are not coming to take my child away. I'm not being abusive. My child is an infant, is a toddler. My child's a baby and babies cry. This is what happens. Yes, I am very stressed about this, but the police are not going to come and take my kid away. They're not going to come take my baby away. That's something my mother said, and I believed it. Okay, and then once I identified that, it stopped. Those beliefs, that thought stopped happening. I mean, it wasn't like every time, but I did have it reoccur, and when it reoccurred, I was like, that's not me, that's my mom talking. And that was very healing. That was one of the first steps I had at really getting in touch and really connecting that childhood trauma to the present day trauma. And it was very stressful. I think I had postpartum anxiety after my child was born. My ex was still incredibly abusive. And it's just now, after being removed from him for over a year, have I really started to have the space and capacity to work through some of that trauma with him, with that marriage, and to see how abusive it was. When you're in abuse, you don't see it because you go numb because you have to survive. You go into survivor mode. So that's why the false beliefs get planted into you. So you really have to get in touch with your emotions so that you can identify where a thought and a belief is coming from. And they might not be as clear as what I just explained to you. It might be kind of vague. It takes a lot of practice and self-reflection to really, really kind of like identify and really stabilize. And I have a very good memory, like almost dangerously good memory. So the fact that I could remember very, very specifically, like I was in the car, the back seat of the car, crying. My mother was turning around and yelling at us to stop crying, and then told us that child services would take us away if we didn't behave. Like, I remember that very distinctly, and it happened more than once. And I know that part of it is her own fear. I can see it now that I'm adult, now that I am a parent, now that I've been through a similar situation with an alcoholic spouse. I can clearly see where that fear was coming from my mother. She genuinely was afraid that like child services was going to take her kids away because she knew it was not a safe environment for us. But also she was too afraid to leave. And I'm not excusing her behavior because she loves being the martyr, because my mother's also a bit of a narcissist. So saying that, she's very much aware of other people. So she believed very strongly that, people are always watching you. And that was a belief that I had internalized because having a narcissistic parent, the most important thing that the narcissists feel and are concerned about is other people's views of themselves. So growing up with a narcissistic mother, I believed that everybody's watching you. You have to have makeup just to go to the mailbox because you don't know what anybody's going to say. You have to, you can't touch people certain ways in front of people because people are judging you. And because you had the added layer of evangelical Christianity. The angels of God are watching you. So even when nobody's around and you're alone in private, God's still watching you, and angels are still. So it was like paranoia. Like there was no sense of security, no sense of peace, no sense of just privacy. And I didn't have privacy growing up anyways, because my mother would read my stuff and listen in on phone calls, and I was treated like an object, like a property by both my parents. But I digress. A lot of limiting beliefs in childhood for me, possibly for you too, maybe not. And if you got into the relationship and this is your first time going into an abusive relationship, or if you're not anyways, like we all have some limiting beliefs because, we can't help it. We have to put some kind of belief system into something else because it helps us feel like we have control over the situation, to feel like we can do something about it. So if bad things happen, we must be bad people. That's not true. Things just happen. Whether they're bad or not is yet to be determined until you're dead. Anything could turn around. What you think might be bad may have a positive side to it. And it's just what is happening. And meditation really does help kind of let go of some of that stuff. You stop feeling the weight of things that happen, and you start accepting that things just happen. You don't have to assign any kind of meaning to what is happening in your life. You can choose to let things go. And it's hard to do that, and it doesn't, I'm gonna raise my hand. Choosing to be happy is not something that when you're stuck in depression, when you're stuck in abusive relationships, you're not going to be able to do that. You can't just choose to be happy because you're being assaulted verbally, emotionally, sometimes physically. You are being attacked. And you feel that, and you're in defense mode and you're in survive mode. You cannot find and choose joy when you are stuck in survive. When you don't know what the next minute's going to bring, when you're walking on eggshells. You have to get out of that situation before you can really find that peace and joy. Or the situation has to stabilize. And that takes a lot more work than this particular episode can bring. And I'm not like a psychologist. I'm only sharing what I've learned from my own experiences. I do have a psychology degree, but it's only a bachelor's. I also have a sociology degree, only a bachelor's. So I can't deep dive into this with you, and every individual is different. Every experience is different. So what you're going through might be different than what I went through. But sharing this, I hope that you are able to at least find some nuggets of knowledge and be able to make some better choices and moves for yourself. And most importantly, I hope that you're able to find and identify those false beliefs, and then undoing them. Once you learn where those beliefs come from, you can sever that connection and you can start to heal. Once you know that belief was planted in you from some experience or some other person, something somebody else said to you, you can let it go because it's not yours. You don't have to hold on to it anymore. And then you can start putting your own belief. And then when that thing comes up, like with me, with my mom and the child services belief, once I identified the belief, acknowledged that that was not true. Anytime I felt that way, anytime I heard a siren and I started thinking, oh no, they're coming, I reminded myself that's not true. They're not coming. Babies cry. Honestly, they have way more important things to take care of than your crying baby. And once I did that, I would take a breath, kind of break that cycle, and I'd feel better. And over time, I stopped even thinking that way. So it doesn't happen overnight. It does take some time, and you can substitute a new belief for that false belief. I used to also, this isn't necessarily a false belief, but I used to kind of quietly say, my life's a mess. I'm such a mess. When anything was happening and I felt stressed out, I would say to myself silently, I'm such a mess. I'm such a mess. And once I started saying, okay, I don't want to believe that I'm a mess. I don't like that. I'm a work in progress, or I'm doing my best. So when I started to think I'm a mess, I said, no, I'm doing my best. And before long, I stopped actually thinking I'm a mess, and I kept saying like, I'm just doing my best. I'm doing my best. It's getting better each day. And like that belief started to change. So sometimes it's some cognitive behavior therapy where you actually have to be aware of what you are thinking. And that's where meditation also comes in and really plays a key role. Because when you meditate, you allow the thoughts to exist and you don't judge yourself for having any of the thoughts that pop in your head while you're meditating, because that's normal. That's what our brains do. You can acknowledge them and then you can focus back. And once you start learning to kind of like, oh, I see you, that's a thought. I'm going to focus back on my breathing now. Oh, that's a thought. I'm going to think about, that space between my eyes. Whatever it is that you're meditating on, you kind of acknowledge the thought but move back to what you were doing. That's powerful. You're retraining your brain to be able to ignore those kinds of thoughts and learn something different. So when you're in the real world, like not meditating, and you're thinking these negative false beliefs, you'll be able to identify them as just a thought and substitute your own more fulfilling kind of mantras that push you and motivate you to go forward. So I wish the best for you. Thank you for listening. Bye.